Let's start the conversation by looking at the business relations that exist between U.S. and Africa, which resulted to the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State. You know, he took African tour to 4 African countries. Why do you think it's significant to have this kind of visit around this time, and what could be the impact to these countries?
It's good that we're having this comment at this point in time, but we have to be quite holistic in our analysis of why such a visit should be coming in. So there are different dimensions to it, and I, in my usual character, would not be biased because I look out for the interest of my country, our country, Nigeria, just like I know the Secretary of State will be looking out for the interest of his own country. But let's focus on the positives that come with this, and let's also not run away from the reason why we're having this at this point in time. Now, let us start with the fact that there is a new scramble for Africa. And the competition is between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out, i.e. America and very notably France. So it is important that this kind of visits are coming now, especially at the beginning of the year, and particularly because the American country is going into an election year, for there to be a renegotiation of relationships, for there to be how we can start looking at forging, like Blinken did say, what can we do with Africa, no longer what we can do for Africa. So I think there is the reawakening, there is the renaissance that is going on within the sub-Saharan African continent, and some countries are beginning to come into their own, and they can no longer be neglected. Now, as it concerns Nigeria, Nigeria happens to be one of the major trading partners of the United States, and it is not a country, being the most populous black nation on earth, that you would want to ignore. And you also find out that some other countries and their business interests, because of the economic situation, not just Nigeria, globally, are getting away or departing or divesting from Nigeria. That opens the door for other American companies to fill that gap. That also leaves a gap for the Eastern Bloc countries, the Russia, the China, and other countries to also fill in the gap. So it is a race to consolidate the economic base. It is a race to renegotiate the partnership that has been there for almost 70 years. And I hope that our administrators, our leaders, will have their hands on the deck to actually scrutinize whatever has been thrown at us and to ensure that they take decisions that are in the best interest of Nigeria and that will boost social efficiency as we go forward. So it's a positive one. The emphasis seemed to have been a visit to come and open a technology center, but those of us that are public analysts know that it is much more than just opening a technology space in Lekki. It is about coming to say, look, we have been age-long friends and we have been allies, so to speak, and we want to remain aligned with our interest in Nigeria and forge that interest and take it deeper.
All right, so what benefit do you think this would bring for the 4 African countries that were picked? So even if there may be reasons that you've given now, there may be motives behind the visits, but what gain does it present for these African countries?
Well, we should look at a lot of economic gains that will be coming in. What we're needing in Nigeria, in Africa, and this selected countries that we visited now, is investments. We need a lot of investments. But I have always reiterated the dichotomy that exists in terms of investments. You have 2 types of investments. You have the foreign direct investments, and you have the foreign portfolio investments, which are indirect investments. But one thing that we do not get to read too much in the print or in the broadcast media here about is that most of the investments that come into Africa are mostly portfolio investments. So those portfolio investments are indirect. They are not really creating the jobs. They are not really accelerating the economic growth and development that we need. So we should be looking at the interest for Africa and for these countries, but much more emphasizing that, look, come and build factories here. Don't just come and set up a space, Don't just come and put money in some banks. Don't just come and invest in companies that are already in existence. Come and build factories here. Come and do what you did with China, which has also made China a superpower in terms of manufacturing. We need more manufacturing companies. We need more manufacturing plants. We need more investments that are direct, not just turnkey projects, not projects that you just put on ground. Once you recover your investment, double of the ROI, like we say in accounting, you move away. So it is not just about identifying or highlighting the benefits. It's about the benefiting countries sitting down to say, this is what we want, this is what is good for us, and we know you have the capacity to deploy that to Africa. So it is having the foresight, having the hindsight, and being ahead of the curve. That's what I think we should be looking at in terms of the benefits for the countries that will be recipients of investments going forward.
All right. According to Blinken, American entrepreneurs are quite interested in the tech sector. They've identified the tech sector in Nigeria as a critical area. Why do you think there's keen interest in the tech sector, and what kind of partnership do you think Nigeria should have with the US when it comes to this sector?
All right, the tech sector is one sector that I take a look at, and sometimes I am not particularly impressed. You may be shocked to hear that, because sometimes when you talk of technology, the first thing that comes to your mind is fintech companies, and the real technology that is supposed to take African countries to space. Nobody is giving us the technical know-how. Nobody is transferring that technology or that knowledge to Africa. So they just give us Wi-Fi and give us some of these things, but that's on a lighter note. Now, when we talk about the technology that we should be anticipating, my problem with technological partnership is that who actually is on the benefiting end? For example, you look at the fintech company, and we have, I think from the last count, we have about 5 unicorns in Nigeria now that are Nigerian founded companies. But where were those companies registered? These are some of the things we don't take a look at. So I'm not going to mention names, but if they paid us at Souq to advertise them, then I will mention their names. But you have most of these companies that were registered in the US, but you hear are Nigerian fintechs. How do you reconcile that? So I think that the partnership must be renegotiated. And the technology that we're looking at is not technology that is just for subsistence, everyday living. What about the technology that will deliver the rate of development advancement that puts us at par with the Western countries? We need technology, not just in the area of the internet, not in the area of fin technology. We need space technology. We need nuclear technology. We need these technologies that will improve the everyday life of the over 120 million Nigerians that live in abject poverty. Not just for entrepreneurship. It's not just about commerce. It's not just about trade. But what will go down, trickle down, to ameliorating the living conditions in Nigeria and to alleviating the poverty that people are suffering. So when we talk about technology, you hear so many billions of investments. Yet again, it comes to foreign portfolio investments, not actually direct investments. So I want to see a deployment of technology. I want to see a transfer of technology in Nigeria that will, look, let me surprise you. At the last count, we had about 10,000 professors in Nigeria. Real professors across the public universities and the private universities. Now, when you look at the STEM divide, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics divide, it's usually 60-40. So we have, from that number, at least about 6,000 professors in the sciences. And yet, we cannot generate 5,000 megawatts of electricity. Why? Because the technology that we need is not being transferred to us. The knowledge, the basic emphasis that we need is what we are giving, and I don't think it's a call for celebration. So I project a situation whereby we should be asking for complete transfer of technology, and we should be appropriating that technology, not just in the area of fintech, in the internet, but in every other concerted area that will improve the standard of living for Nigerians.
Okay, let's look at some of the key priorities of Anthony Blinken's visit. One of them is to boost security partnerships in Africa. Going by what you said, that African countries should be asking for or should be making negotiations based on what benefits them, not what would be the benefits for the countries. So in this regard, that Blinken or the US is offering some funds to support African countries in terms of security. What should be the response of African countries as the benefiting countries to say, this is what we'd rather have, or this is what we need?
He who pays the piper definitely will dictate the tune. We cannot run away from the fact that the superpowers of the world know where the security lapses in Africa, and especially Nigeria, actually are. Now, I'm emotional about this because when you see what is happening in the country, you weep even though you're not affected. There was a time in our country, I may not answer your question directly, where a particular sitting president actually ran to the United States and pleaded for the sale of arms and ammunition to be able to fight insecurity and fight the restiveness that was occurring in different sections of the country. And there was no positive answer. Why? So if you now come some 5, 6, 7 years after to now tell me that we should be telling you what we need.
So what has changed?
What has changed? It's not about what we need, you know what we need. So if somebody is not benefiting from the insecurity situation in Nigeria, the situation as it stands will not still be in perpetuity. So my appeal is for us to have all hands on the deck, to actually sit down. Why do we have this situation as it stands, and what can we do about it? You shouldn't be telling us to come and tell you what we need. We know what is wrong. We know where the problems are. And we know also that we may not even have enough sophisticated technology to fight this insurgency. We also know that the insurgents are also getting their own forms of arms and ammunition that sometimes seem to be more sophisticated than those of the military. So conducting a need analysis shouldn't be the issue. Actually deploring the facts and the data on ground. Because if we actually go into a partnership, a security partnership with the superpowers, I'm sure we can wrest this insecurity situation in Nigeria and bring it to its knees in 2024.
All right. Some of the concerns raised by Blinken is the fact that American entrepreneurs are contending with the issue of corruption and the crisis, surrounding repatriation of funds, in Nigeria. Those are the critical issues he raised. How do you think this could be of threat to foreign investment in a country like Nigeria? And what should the Nigerian authority do when it comes to the issue of corruption and repatriation of funds?
Well, two big elephants in the room. I think one is white, and I don't know if you will agree with me that one may be gray. Okay, so I think I should start with the gray one, since gray doesn't look too bad. Then we'll come to the white, which is corruption. I think the repatriation of funds is a major problem that is hindering the flow of investments into Nigeria, and that is also promoting the threat of divestment away from Nigeria. I've been following the activities of the new central bank governor, and I think that there's a real sincerity of purpose to get us out of this economic conundrum, but I also think that enough is not being done. And I think that the capacity to do what is needed to be done is actually there. Going by the number of barrels of oil we sell on a daily basis, it shouldn't be too hard to make it accessible for companies to actually repatriate their capital back to their host countries. But you see, the problem is more of a socio-economic problem than it is one that we should just talk about. Socio-economic in the sense that if the will is not there, the way will never be carved. So when you look at that issue, it's very complex. I would want to go into the nitty-gritty and the details about that. That issue in itself has the white elephant in the room playing a role in it, because you have two markets for foreign exchange in Nigeria, for instance.
We're looking at the economic implications of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the 4 African countries that he's visiting. And our guest in the studio, Dr. Ikenwa, has been exploring some of those implications. Now, before we went on the break, you were on a line of thoughts responding to Blinken's worry of corruption in Nigeria, as it may deter some investors?
Yeah, what I did say is that the emphasis on the repatriation of fund has an undertone of corruption behind it, and it is particularly because some people are benefiting from that process. But to also say that corruption is a major hindrance to attracting investments into the country is one point I think I want to beg to disagree with. I think the major problem that could hinder investment into the country and hinder investment within the country is the lack of distributive justice. And what does that mean? It means that a good number of Nigerians, almost 60%, don't have access to the Commonwealth in the ground of Nigeria, on the ground in Nigeria, and the Commonwealth that is being created in Nigeria. That in itself is the major catalyst, okay, that exacerbates the problems of corruption in Nigeria. Now, in sociology, we call it the strain theory. There's a strain. Okay, so I see there's so much around me, like Chinua Achebe did say. How do I have a river at my backyard and then begin to use spit to wash my hand?